The penthouse door swung open before Keisha could knock. Her hands trembled as she balanced the room service tray, the crystal glasses clinking against each other. Through the gap, she saw them. 7 men in dark suits circled around a glass table covered with stacks of cash and what looked like bricks of something wrapped in plastic. The man at the head of the table had his jacket off, and even from the doorway, Keisha could see the twisted, keloid scars covering his arms and disappearing under his shirt collar. He was counting money with calculated precision, his movements sharp and deliberate. "Room service," she whispered, her Nigerian accent thickening with fear. Nobody turned. Nobody acknowledged her. She should have left the tray and run, but the hotel's strict policy echoed in her mind. Delivered directly to the guest, get a signature. She needed this job. After 15 rejections in 3 months, she couldn't afford to lose another one. Keisha stepped forward, her worn sneakers silent on the marble floor. That's when her elbow caught the edge of a decorative vase on the hallway table. The crash shattered the tense silence like a gunshot. 7 pairs of eyes snapped toward her. But it was his gaze that paralyzed her, the scarred man at the table. Kang Ji-hoon. She didn't know his name then, but she would never forget those eyes. Dark, calculating, and fixed on the keloid scars visible on her neck, where her uniform collar had shifted. "Well," Ji-hoon said in perfect English, his voice like gravel and silk. "It seems we have a witness." Keisha's tray clattered to the floor. She ran. Behind her, she heard chairs scraping, footsteps pounding. She slammed through the emergency exit door, her heart hammering against her ribs as she flew down 15 flights of stairs. When she finally burst out onto the Seoul street, the neon lights of Gangnam blurred through her tears. She didn't stop running until she reached her tiny apartment in Heroine, 3 subway stops away. That night, Keisha couldn't sleep. Every car engine outside her window sounded like them coming for her. Every shadow looked like a man in a dark suit. She pressed her fingers against the raised scars on her shoulder, the keloids from the Lagos market fire that had killed her mother 12 years ago. The scars that made Korean employers look at her resume, and then at her skin and suddenly remember the position had been filled. The scars that made her invisible and too visible at the same time. By morning, she'd convinced herself it was over. She'd quit the hotel job, disappear into Seoul's foreign worker underground, maybe move to Busan. But when she arrived at the hotel to collect her last paycheck, the manager's face was already set in that expression she knew too well, disgust mixed with pity. "You're terminated," he said in Korean, not even bothering with English. "Effective immediately. You caused a disturbance with VIP guests. Security will escort you out." "I just delivered room service," Keisha started, but 2 security guards were already flanking her, their hands firm on her elbows. They walked her through the lobby where other staff members stared and whispered. The humiliation burned hotter than any fire. Outside, the morning sun felt cruel and exposing. She stood on the sidewalk, her final paycheck clutched in shaking hands, trying to figure out which subway line could take her furthest from this disaster. "Miss Nelson." The voice came from behind her, smooth and polite. Keisha spun around to find 2 men in immaculate black suits standing beside a Mercedes with tinted windows. The taller one smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Mr. Kong would like to speak with you. Please, come with us." "I don't know any Mr. Kong," Keisha lied, backing away. "You have the wrong person." "We have exactly the right person," the shorter one said, pulling open the car door. "You can come willingly and walk out of this conversation alive. Or we can make this difficult. Your choice, Miss Nelson." Have you ever been so terrified that your body moved before your mind could process? Drop a comment below about a time fear made your decisions for you. And if you're already hooked on Keisha's story, hit that subscribe button. This is just the beginning, and trust me, you don't want to miss what happens next. The car ride lasted 20 minutes, but it felt like hours. Keisha sat between the 2 men, her fingers digging into her knees, trying to control her breathing. They drove through Gangnam, past the glittering shopping districts and into a quieter area where buildings had fewer windows and more security cameras. The car pulled into an underground garage beneath what looked like an upscale restaurant. They led her through a kitchen where chefs worked in deliberate silence, not even glancing up as the men in suits passed through with their terrified captive. A private elevator took them up 3 floors. The doors opened directly into an office that screamed old money and new power. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Seoul, traditional Korean art on the walls, and a massive desk made of dark wood that probably cost more than Keisha had earned in her entire life. Kang Ji-hoon sat behind that desk, reading something on a tablet. He didn't look up immediately. The silence stretched until Keisha's pulse thundered in her ears. Finally, he set the tablet down and studied her with the same intense focus from the night before. "Sit," he said, gesturing to the chair across from him. It wasn't a request. Keisha sat, her back rigid, ready to run even though she knew she'd never make it to the elevator. Ji-hoon leaned back in his chair, his scarred arms visible beneath rolled-up sleeves. The scars were worse than hers, thick, ropey keloids that wrapped around his forearms like armor. You're Nigerian. Yoruba or Igbo? Yoruba, Keisha answered automatically, then cursed herself for engaging. What do you want from me? Honest question, do you think I'm going to kill you? Keisha's throat tightened. I don't know what I saw last night. I didn't see anything. I just want to go home. Ji-hoon laughed, a low sound that seemed to surprise even him. He stood up and walked around the desk, moving with the grace of someone who'd learned to fight and learned to survive. When he was close enough that Keisha could smell his expensive cologne mixed with cigarette smoke, he stopped. Then, slowly and deliberately, he unbuttoned his shirt. Keisha's breath caught as he revealed his chest and stomach, a landscape of burn scars so extensive they must have covered 40% of his torso. 7 years ago, my father's enemies tied me to a chair and set me on fire, Ji-hoon said, his voice devoid of emotion, as if he were discussing the weather. They wanted information. They wanted me to break. Instead, I memorized each of their faces while I burned. Do you know what I learned that night, Miss Nelson? Keisha couldn't speak. She shook her head. That scars are not weakness. They are proof you survived something that was supposed to destroy you. He buttoned his shirt back up, his eyes never leaving hers. Last night, when you stumbled into my meeting, do you know what I saw? Not a clumsy hotel worker. I saw someone who carries her battles on her skin. Someone who understands what it means to be marked by fire. I don't understand what this has to do with. You've been in Seoul for 5 years, Ji-hoon interrupted, sitting on the edge of his desk now, close enough that Keisha had to tilt her head back to maintain eye contact. Top of your class at Yonsei University. Degree in International Business and Economics. Fluent in Korean, English, Yoruba, and passable Mandarin. 15 job rejections in 3 months. Do you want to know why? Keisha's hands clenched into fists. I know why. Say it. Because I'm black. Because I'm foreign. Because my scars make them uncomfortable. The words came out bitter, each one a wound she pretended didn't hurt. Exactly, Ji-hoon said, and something like approval flickered across his face. In their world, you're a liability. Someone to hide, to overlook, to reject. But in my world, Miss Nelson, you're an asset. People see you. They remember you. That body of yours tells a story before you even open your mouth. And in my business, being memorable, being someone no one can forget, that's power. What are you saying? I'm offering you a job. Real money. Real power. A chance to stop begging for scraps from people who will never see your worth. Ji-hoon picked up a folder from his desk and dropped it in her lap. Your apartment lease is up in 2 weeks. You have 340,000 Korean wons in your bank account. At your current burn rate, you'll be homeless in 40 days. I'm offering you a way out. Keisha opened the folder with trembling fingers. Inside was a contract, written in both Korean and English. The salary made her gasp, more than she'd make in a year at any corporate job that would never hire her anyway. What would I have to do? Manage my international operations. Use that expensive education they're wasting. Be my eyes and ears in spaces where a Korean face draws too much attention. Ji-hoon tilted his head, studying her reaction. I have business in Nigeria, Ghana, South Africa. I need someone who understands those markets, speaks those languages, knows how to navigate between cultures. Someone smart enough to see the angles others miss. You mean a legal business? I mean profitable business. Don't pretend to have morals you can't afford, Miss Nelson. You're 1 month away from calling your family back in Lagos to tell them Seoul didn't work out. That you're coming home a failure. The words hit like physical blows because they were true. Where you can take this job. Move into a real apartment. Stop hiding who you are. Stop apologizing for taking up space. Keisha's mind raced. This was insane. He was a criminal. She'd seen the evidence last night. Working for him meant crossing a line she could never uncross. But what was the alternative? Another 6 months of rejection emails and pitying looks? Another year of living in a closet-sized apartment, rationing meals, pretending the stairs didn't cut deep? And if I say no? Ji-hoon's expression hardened. Then you become a loose end. I can't have witnesses walking around Seoul. So you have 2 choices, work for me, or I arrange for you to go back to Nigeria tonight with enough money to start over. Witness protection, Korean style. You disappear. New identity. You never speak of what you saw. Either way, the Keisha Nelson who worked at that hotel no longer exists as of this morning. That's not a choice. That's a threat. That's reality. Ji-hoon corrected. I'm not the villain in your story, Miss Nelson. I'm the only person in this entire city who's looked at you and seen potential instead of problems. So what will it be? Do you want to keep begging a world that will never accept you for permission to exist? Or do you want to take what's yours? The worst part was how much sense he made. How much his words resonated with the rage she'd been swallowing for 5 years. Every job rejection. Every date who'd ghosted after seeing her scars in person. Every Korean ajumma who'd clutched her purse tighter when Keisha sat next to her on the subway. She was tired. God, She was so tired of being grateful for crumbs. If I do this, Keisha said slowly, I want it in writing. Clear responsibilities. Clear boundaries. And I want to know exactly what I'm getting into. For the first time, Ji-hoon smiled. A real smile that transformed his scarred face into something almost handsome. Smart. That's exactly why I need you. He extended his hand. Welcome to the family, Miss Nelson. Keisha stared at that hand. Scarred. Dangerous. Offering her everything she'd been denied. She shook it. His grip was firm, warm, and sealing a deal that would change everything. Call me Keisha, she said, surprised by the steadiness in her voice. If we're doing this, we're doing it right. Then call me Ji-hoon. Only my enemies use formalities. He released her hand and pressed a button on his desk. One of the suited men from earlier appeared in the doorway. Dae-young, take Miss Nelson to the Hanam apartment. Make sure she has everything she needs. Tomorrow morning, 9 a.m., she starts. The apartment in Hanamdong made Keisha want to cry. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Han River. A kitchen bigger than her entire previous apartment. A bathroom with a tub she could actually stretch out in. The bed was massive, covered in crisp white linens that probably cost more than her monthly rent used to. Dae-young, Ji-hoon's lieutenant, watched her reaction with barely concealed skepticism. Boss has never brought in an outsider like this, he said in Korean, his tone making it clear he didn't approve. Especially not a woman. Especially not a foreign woman. Keisha turned to face him, switching to Korean herself. Then I guess I'll have to prove I'm worth the exception. Dae-young's eyes narrowed. We'll see. Don't get comfortable. Most people who enter this world don't last long. He dropped a black credit card on the kitchen counter. For necessities. Someone will pick you up at 8:30 tomorrow. Don't be late. Then he was gone, leaving Keisha alone in more luxury than she'd ever experienced. That night, she stood by the window, watching Seoul's lights shimmer across the river. Her phone buzzed. Minji, her only real friend in this city. The Korean-Nigerian woman who'd understood what it meant to exist between worlds. Keisha stared at the message asking if she was okay, her thumb hovering over the keyboard. How could she explain this? She couldn't. Not yet. Maybe not ever. She turned her phone off and tried to sleep in sheets that smelled like money and decisions she couldn't take back. The next morning, a woman around Keisha's age was waiting in the lobby, stylish, sharp-eyed, with purple highlights in her black hair. You're the new girl, she said in English with a slight Korean accent. I'm Hannah, Tech and Intelligence. Ji-hoon said you'd need someone to show you around who won't try to intimidate you to death, like Dae-young. Is it that obvious he hates me? Dae-young hates everyone at first. It's his love language. Hannah grinned and linked her arm through Keisha's. Come on. We've got orientation, and it's not the corporate training video kind. The office was the same building as Ji-hoon's restaurant, but the basement level was something else entirely. Banks of computers, people working with focused intensity, maps of Seoul and other cities covering the walls. Hannah walked Keisha through it all. The legitimate businesses that fronted the operation, the international shipping routes, the network of contacts spanning 5 continents. Ji-hoon's not like other gangs, Hannah explained as they passed a room where men were counting what had to be millions of won. He's strategic. Building an empire, not just controlling territory. That's where you come in. He's been trying to expand into West African markets for 2 years, but he doesn't have anyone who really understands the culture, the language, the way business works there. And he thinks I can do that. He doesn't think. He knows. Ji-hoon doesn't make mistakes about people. Hannah stopped in front of a private office, smaller than Ji-hoon's, but still impressive. Keisha's name was already on the door in both English and Korean. This is yours. Computer, secure phone, encrypted email. Everything you need. Your first assignment brief is on the desk. Keisha stepped inside, her heart pounding. The brief was detailed. A Nigerian contact involved in shipping, potential partnership, meeting scheduled for tomorrow. They wanted her to vet him, determine if he was legitimate or a plant from a rival organization. Her hands shook as she read through the intelligence files. This was real. This was actually happening. Overwhelmed, Ji-hoon's voice came from the doorway. He leaned against the frame, watching her with that intense focus that made her feel exposed and seen at the same time. Terrified, Keisha admitted. What if I mess this up? Then you learn from it. I don't expect perfection, Keisha. I expect effort and honesty. He moved into the office, closing the door behind him. But I need to know, are you really ready for this? Because once you take this first assignment, there's no going back. You'll be part of this world. People will know your face, your name, your association with me. Keisha thought about the alternative. Going back to that cycle of rejection, of making herself smaller, of apologizing for existing. She touched the scars on her neck, feeling their familiar texture. You asked me yesterday if I wanted to keep begging for permission to exist. I don't. I'm done shrinking myself for people who'll never see me as enough. Good. Ji-hoon's approval was palpable. The meeting tomorrow is at a restaurant in Itaewon. You'll go alone. This contact won't speak freely with my people present, but you'll be wired. We'll hear everything. If anything feels wrong, say the word authentic and we extract you immediately. What if he recognizes that I work for you? He won't. As far as the world knows, you're an independent consultant for international trade, which, technically, you are. Ji-hoon handed her a business card with her name and a legitimate-looking company title. Trust your instincts tomorrow. You survived Lagos markets and Seoul's corporate racism. You know how to read people, how to survive. Use that. After he left, Keisha sat at her new desk, staring at the business card. Keisha Nelson, Director of International Trade Relations. It looked real, professional, like she was someone who mattered. She ran her finger over the embossed letters and felt something unfamiliar bloom in her chest. Not quite hope, but close. Maybe this was what possibility felt like. The next evening, Keisha stood outside the Nigerian restaurant in Itaewon, her heart hammering against her ribs. She'd dressed carefully, professional but approachable, her scars visible because Ji-hoon had made it clear, never hide them. The tiny earpiece Hannah had fitted her with was invisible, but she felt hyper-aware of it. Somewhere nearby, Ji-hoon and his team were listening to every word. The contact, Emmanuel Okafor, was already seated when she entered. Mid-40s, expensive watch, the kind of carefully neutral expression that came from years of dangerous negotiations. He stood when he saw her, his eyes flickering to her scars, and then away. Polite enough not to stare, but she'd seen the recognition. He knew what fire looked like. Miss Nelson, he said in Yoruba, testing her. Thank you for meeting me. Mr. Okafor, Keisha responded in the same language, sliding into the chair across from him. I appreciate you coming all this way. I understand you have a proposal regarding shipping routes between Lagos and Busan. For the next hour, they danced around the real conversation. Emmanuel talked about legitimate container shipping, import-export regulations, customs procedures. But underneath the corporate language, Keisha heard what he was really saying. He had connections in Lagos ports, officials who could be paid to overlook certain cargo, routes that avoided inspection. He was offering to be Ji-hoon's gateway into West African smuggling operations. You're very well informed about Korean business practices, Emmanuel said, switching to English as their food arrived. Not many Nigerians understand how things work here. How did you end up in Seoul? University. Stayed for the opportunities. Keisha kept her voice neutral. This was the test. Was he genuinely asking, or fishing for information? And now you work in international trade. Emmanuel's smile didn't reach his eyes. For Korean interests. That's unusual. Most Koreans I've met prefer to keep business within their own community. They must trust you very much. There it was. He was probing, trying to understand her position, her leverage. Keisha took a sip of her palm wine, using the moment to gather her thoughts. Trust is earned through results, Mr. Okafor. I deliver what I promise. Which brings me to my question. Can you deliver what you're promising? Because my associates don't appreciate wasted time or false guarantees. Emmanuel leaned back, reassessing her. Your associates? You mean Kong Ji-hoon? The name hung between them like a loaded gun. Keisha kept her expression neutral even as her pulse spiked. I mean the people who employ me to verify opportunities. If you're asking whether I have the authority to negotiate on their behalf, the answer is yes. If you're asking whether I'm serious about this potential partnership, the answer is also yes. But only if you're legitimate. Legitimate is a relative term in our business. Emmanuel pulled out his phone and showed her photos, shipping manifests, port official documents, warehouse locations in Lagos. Real evidence, not vague promises. I can move anything you need from West African ports to Asian markets. Electronics, textiles, pharmaceuticals. Whatever the cargo, I have the routes and the people. Keisha studied the documents, her mind racing. This was real. He was real. But something felt off. He was too eager, showing too much too soon. Impressive. But you came all the way to Seoul just to show me photos? You could have emailed these. I wanted to meet you in person, to see if the rumors were true. What rumors? That Kong Ji-hoon has brought in an African woman. That he trusts her with his international operations. That she's, Emmanuel paused, choosing his words carefully, someone who understands what it means to survive fire. Keisha's blood ran cold. He knew, not just about her scars, but about Ji-hoon's. That level of intelligence meant he'd done serious homework. You seem to know a lot about my employer's personal history. I know a lot about everyone I do business with. It's how I stay alive. Emmanuel's expression shifted, becoming almost sympathetic. I also know what it's like to be underestimated because of how you look. To have doors closed before you even knock. Ji-hoon is giving you an opportunity most people in your position would never get. I respect that. Which is why I'm being honest with you now. I'm not just here to offer shipping routes. I'm here because there are people in Lagos who want to know if Ji-hoon is expanding into African markets. People who would pay well for that information. The word authentic was on Keisha's tongue, ready to trigger the extraction. But she hesitated. This wasn't a threat, it was a test. Emmanuel was showing his cards to see how she'd play hers. And what did you tell these people? That I'd find out. And then I'd decide who to sell that information to. Emmanuel leaned forward. Here's my authentic offer, Miss Nelson. I can be your partner in Lagos, opening doors and smoothing paths. Or I can be your competitor's informant, telling them every move Ji-hoon makes in Africa before he makes it. The choice is yours. But decide quickly. This opportunity expires when I leave Seoul tomorrow. Keisha's mind raced. This was beyond her first assignment. This was a power play, a negotiation that could make or break Ji-hoon's expansion plans. She thought about what Ji-hoon had said, trust your instincts. And her instincts said Emmanuel was dangerous but valuable. A man willing to betray others might betray them too, but at least he was honest about his lack of loyalty. How much? She asked simply. Emmanuel smiled. Now we're speaking the same language. They negotiated for another 30 minutes. Emmanuel wanted a partnership stake, not just payment. 15% of all West African operations, guaranteed protection from Ji-hoon's network, and a direct line to decision-makers. Keisha countered with 8%, conditional on proven results, and made it clear that betrayal would have consequences that transcended continents. You negotiate like someone who's had to fight for everything, Emmanuel said, finally agreeing to 10% with a 6-month probation period. Ji-hoon chose well. Ji-hoon doesn't make mistakes about people. Keisha echoed Hannah's words, surprised by how much she was starting to believe them. I'll have contracts drawn up by tomorrow. Bring your passport and banking information to the office at 2 p.m. And Mr. Okafor? If you're playing both sides, I'll know. And you won't enjoy what comes next. Emmanuel laughed, genuine this time. I believe you. You have your mother's fire. The comment struck like a physical blow. You didn't know my mother. No, but I know what it looks like when someone refuses to let the world burn them twice. He stood, extending his hand. Tomorrow at 2. Don't disappoint me, Miss Nelson. After he left, Keisha sat alone in the restaurant, her hands shaking with adrenaline. The earpiece crackled to life, Ji-hoon's voice, low and approving. Well done. Car's outside. We need to debrief. Back at the office, Ji-hoon's entire team was waiting. Dae-young looked skeptical as always, Hannah was grinning, and Ji-hoon stood by the window with an expression Keisha couldn't read. You went off script, he said, not turning around. He gave me an opening. I took it. You negotiated terms without authorization. You said trust my instincts. My instincts said we needed him more than he needed us, but he also needed to know we're not desperate. Keisha's voice was steady despite her racing heart. If I'd waited for approval, he would have walked. Men like Emmanuel respect decisiveness, not hesitation. Ji-hoon finally turned, and his expression had shifted to something like pride. 10% is generous. 10% of something is better than 15% of nothing. And if he betrays us, we know exactly where to find him. Keisha pulled out her phone, showing the photos she'd secretly taken of Emmanuel's documents. I have all his port contacts, his warehouse locations, his officials. If he crosses us, we burn his entire Lagos operation to the ground. The room went silent. Then Ji-hoon laughed. A real, genuine sound that made even Dae-young's eyebrows rise. You're more ruthless than I expected. I like it. He nodded to Hannah. Draw up the contracts. Everything Keisha negotiated, but add a termination clause that gives us control of his port access if he breaches terms. On it, boss, Hannah said, already typing on her laptop. Dae-young stepped forward, his skepticism finally cracking. The photograph thing, that was smart. Most people wouldn't think to gather insurance during a first meeting. Most people haven't had to survive by always having a backup plan, Keisha said. In Lagos, trust is a luxury. Leverage is currency. You're starting to sound like one of us, Dae-young said, and it almost sounded like a compliment. Over the next 3 weeks, Keisha proved herself again and again. The Emmanuel deal went through perfectly. The first shipment of electronics arrived in Busan without a single customs issue. She negotiated partnerships in Accra and Johannesburg, using her cultural knowledge to navigate spaces where Ji-hoon's Korean operatives would have stood out like sore thumbs. She was good at this. Better than good. She was indispensable. But it was the late nights that changed things. The nights when everyone else had gone home, and it was just Keisha and Ji-hoon in his office, reviewing contracts and planning strategies. He'd pour expensive whiskey, Korean for him, Nigerian for her, and they'd talk about more than business. Why do you hide the scars on your back? Keisha asked one night, emboldened by alcohol and exhaustion. She'd noticed he always wore long sleeves, even in the summer heat. Ji-hoon was quiet for a long moment. Then, slowly, he stood and removed his shirt completely. Keisha's breath caught. The scars on his chest she'd seen before, but his back was worse, a catastrophic map of keloid tissue that covered almost every inch of skin. Because these aren't survival scars, he said quietly. These are shame scars. My own father's men did this. He ordered it. To teach me loyalty through pain. That's not loyalty. That's torture. In his world, they were the same thing. Ji-hoon put his shirt back on, his movements careful. He wanted me to break. To beg. To prove I was weak like my mother. Instead, I memorized every detail of that room while I burned. The smell of the gasoline. The pattern of the ceiling tiles. The sound of their laughter. And when I healed, I came back and destroyed everything he built. Is he dead? No. I let him live. But I took everything that mattered to him. His empire, his reputation, his power. Now he's just an old man in a nursing home, forgotten by everyone who once feared him. Ji-hoon's eyes met hers. Some punishments are worse than death. Keisha understood that kind of calculated revenge. My scars are from the Lagos market fire. I was 14. My mother and I were shopping for fabric when the gas station next door exploded. She pushed me out of the way, took the worst of it. She died 3 days later in the hospital. And your father? Never knew him. It was always just me and my mom. After she died, I lived with my aunt who made it very clear I was a burden. The scars made it worse. She said no man would ever want me, that I'd ruin my chances at a good life. So I studied harder than anyone, got a scholarship to Korea, and left. Keisha touched her scars absently. I thought if I was smart enough, accomplished enough, the scars wouldn't matter. But they always mattered. Until I met you. I don't see scars when I look at you, Ji-hoon said, moving closer. I see someone who survived flames and came out stronger. Someone who refused to let the world make her small. The air between them shifted, charged with something dangerous and electric. Keisha's pulse quickened. This is a bad idea. Probably. Ji-hoon's hand came up to trace the keloid tissue on her neck, his touch gentle despite his scarred fingers. But I've never been good at resisting bad ideas. They almost kissed. Keisha could feel the heat radiating from his body, could see the desire in his eyes that mirrored her own. But at the last second, she pulled back. I can't. Not yet. Not while I'm still trying to prove myself here. If we do this and it goes wrong. I understand. Ji-hoon stepped back, his expression shifting to something more controlled. You're right. Business first. But the tension didn't dissipate. It hung between them during every meeting, every late-night strategy session, every accidental touch. The entire office could feel it. Hannah teased Keisha mercilessly. Just kiss him already. The sexual tension is making everyone uncomfortable. It's not like that, Keisha protested, even as her face heated. Please. He looks at you like you're the most fascinating thing in the world. And you look at him the same way. I've never seen Ji-hoon care about anyone like this. It's kind of beautiful. And terrifying. Why terrifying? Hannah's expression turned serious. Because caring makes you vulnerable. And in this world, vulnerability gets you killed. The words proved prophetic. 2 months into Keisha's employment, things started going wrong. A shipment disappeared in Lagos. One of Emmanuel's port contacts was found dead. Intelligence suggested a rival organization was making moves into their West African operations. And someone was leaking information, details about routes and contacts that only a few people knew. Ji-hoon called an emergency meeting. His core team gathered in the conference room. Dae-young, Hannah, 3 senior operatives, and Keisha. The tension was suffocating. We have a leak, Ji-hoon said without preamble. Someone in this organization is feeding information to the Busan syndicate. They knew about the Lagos shipment before we even confirmed the route. Everyone started talking at once, accusations flying. But Keisha noticed Dae-young's expression, carefully neutral, but his jaw was too tight, his shoulders too stiff. She'd learned to read people in this business, and everything about his body language screamed guilt. Or was it anger? She couldn't tell. It's her, one of the senior operatives said, pointing at Keisha. She's the newest member. She has all the West African contacts. She could easily be selling information. That's ridiculous, Hannah protested. Keisha has brought in more profit in 2 months than any of you have in a year. Exactly. Perfect cover. Gain trust, then sell secrets. The operative's accusation gained traction. Others nodded, suspicion hardening their faces. Keisha felt the familiar sting of rejection, of being blamed simply for being the outsider. But this time was different. This time, the accusation came with lethal consequences. I'm not your leak, she said, her voice cutting through the chaos. But I know how we can find out who is. Ji-hoon's eyes locked on hers. I'm listening. Give each person in this room different information. Specific details about upcoming shipments that only they would know. See which details get leaked. Keisha kept her voice steady even as everyone stared at her. The guilty person will expose themselves. Smart, Dae-young said, and Keisha couldn't read his tone. But what if you're the leak? This could be a play to buy yourself time. Then test me first, Keisha challenged. Give me false information right now. See if it reaches your rivals. I'll stay under surveillance until it's verified. Ji-hoon was silent for a long moment. Then he nodded. Do it. Keisha will be confined to the Hannam apartment under guard. Everyone else gets their own piece of intelligence. We'll know within 48 hours who's betraying us. The next 2 days were torture. Keisha was essentially under house arrest, 2 guards stationed outside her apartment, her phone and computer confiscated. She had nothing to do but think, worry, and wonder if this was how it would end. Accused, isolated, possibly executed for a crime she didn't commit. The irony wasn't lost on her. She'd finally found a place where her scars didn't matter, and now she might die because of someone else's betrayal. On the second night, Ji-hoon came to the apartment alone. He looked exhausted, his face drawn with stress. "We found the leak," he said without greeting. Keisha's heart stopped. "Who?" "Dae-young. He's been selling information to the Busan Syndicate for 3 months. Since before you even joined." Ji-hoon's voice was flat, emotionless, but Keisha could see the betrayal in his eyes. "He was my brother in everything but blood. I trusted him with my life. And he sold me out for money and resentment." "I'm sorry," Keisha said, "because what else could you say when someone's family betrayed them? Don't be. This is the business we're in. Trust is a commodity, and loyalty has a price." Ji-hoon poured himself a drink from her bar, his hands shaking slightly. "He said he did it because I was getting soft. Because I brought you in, gave you power that should have gone to someone Korean, someone loyal. He said you were making me weak." "What happens to him now?" Keisha asked, though she wasn't sure she wanted to know the answer. "Exile. I should kill him, but I can't. Not after everything we've been through." Ji-hoon's voice cracked slightly. "So he leaves Korea tonight. New identity, new life, and if he ever shows his face in my territory again, the mercy ends." Keisha moved closer, her hand finding his. "Mercy isn't weakness. It's strength. Anyone can kill. It takes real power to choose not to." Ji-hoon looked down at their joined hands, his scarred, her scarred, both marked by fire but still reaching for connection. "The Busan Syndicate knows about you now. They know you're important to me. That makes you a target. I've been a target my whole life. At least now I have the resources to fight back. This is different, Keisha. These people don't just reject you or discriminate against you. They kill, they destroy, and they'll use you to get to me." Ji-hoon's grip tightened. "I can't lose you. Not because you're valuable to the business. Because you're—" He didn't finish, but Keisha understood. She understood because she felt it too. This dangerous, consuming thing growing between them that was so much more than attraction or convenience. "I'm not going anywhere," she said. "You gave me a chance when no one else would. You saw me when the world kept looking through me. I'm not running just because things got dangerous. Then we need to be smart. No more solo meetings. You'll have security everywhere. And we accelerate the West African expansion, make you too valuable for them to touch without starting a war they can't win." Over the next month, they worked like machines. Keisha brokered deals in 5 countries, established networks that made Ji-hoon's organization the dominant force in African-Asian trade routes. She was brilliant at it, reading cultural nuances and power dynamics that Ji-hoon's Korean operatives couldn't see. But the success came with a price: exhaustion, stress, and the constant knowledge that she was being watched by both Ji-hoon's guards and his enemies. The breaking point came on a rare evening when Ji-hoon insisted she take a night off. They went to a private restaurant in Gangnam, just the two of them for the first time since that almost kiss in his office. Keisha wore a dress that showed her scars proudly, deep blue fabric that made her skin glow, her natural hair in an elegant updo. When Ji-hoon saw her, something shifted in his expression. "You're staring," Keisha said, unable to stop her smile. "I'm appreciating. There's a difference." Ji-hoon pulled out her chair, his hand lingering on her shoulder. "You look incredible. Dinner was perfect. Good food, better conversation, the kind of easy intimacy that came from long nights working together and sharing scars both visible and hidden." They talked about everything except business. Keisha told him about growing up in Lagos, the chaos and beauty of the markets, her mother's laugh. Ji-hoon shared rare stories about his childhood before the fire, when he still believed his father loved him. "Do you ever regret it?" Keisha asked over dessert. "This life? The violence, the constant danger." "Every day," Ji-hoon admitted. "But I don't know how to be anything else anymore. This world is the only one that makes sense to me now. What if you could be something else? Someone else? With you?" Ji-hoon's eyes held hers, intense and vulnerable. "I consider it." The moment stretched between them, heavy with possibility. Then Ji-hoon's phone buzzed. His expression darkened as he read the message. "We need to leave. Now." "What's wrong?" "The Busan Syndicate just hit one of our warehouses. 3 of my people are dead." Ji-hoon threw cash on the table, already moving. "They're escalating. This is a declaration of war." The car ride back was tense and silent. When they arrived at the office, chaos reigned. Hannah was coordinating responses, operatives were arming themselves, and the air smelled like fury and impending violence. Ji-hoon immediately took command, his voice cold and authoritative. This was the side of him that had survived fire and betrayal. Ruthless, calculating, dangerous. They hit us because they think we're vulnerable after Dae-young's betrayal, Ji-hoon said, studying maps of Busan territory. They want to provoke a response, drag us into their city where they have the advantage. So we don't give them what they want, Keisha said, her mind racing. We hit them where it hurts, their international connections. I know their West African contacts. Emmanuel told me they've been trying to poach his network. We cut off their expansion, make them look weak to their partners. Everyone turned to stare at her. It was Hannah who spoke first. That's actually brilliant. Economic warfare instead of street violence. It's all so slow, one of the operatives argued. Our people are dead. We need immediate retaliation. Immediate retaliation is what they're expecting. It's what they want. Keisha looked at Ji-hoon. But if we dismantle their future while they're focused on the present, we win the war, not just the battle. Ji-hoon studied her for a long moment. Then he smiled, sharp and predatory. Do it. Cut off every international connection they have. Make them bleed money while we fortify our position. And Keisha, his voice softened. You're staying here, under guard. I'm not risking you. Ji-hoon. That's not negotiable. His tone left no room for argument. You're too important. To the organization. To me. The admission hung in the air. Everyone pretended not to hear it, but Keisha saw Hannah's knowing smile. After the meeting dispersed, Ji-hoon pulled Keisha into his private office. The door had barely closed before his hands were in her hair and his mouth was on hers. The kiss was everything. Desperate, passionate, full of months of tension and denied desire. Keisha melted into him, her hands gripping his shirt as years of rejection and loneliness evaporated in the heat between them. Ji-hoon kissed like a man who'd been starving, like she was oxygen and he'd been drowning. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, his forehead rested against hers. I've wanted to do that since the day you walked into my office, Ji-hoon admitted, his voice rough. Then why did you wait so long? Because I needed you to choose this. Choose me. Not because I gave you a job or because you felt obligated, but because you wanted it as much as I did. His scarred hands cupped her face, thumbs tracing her cheekbones. Do you want this? More than I've wanted anything in a long time, Keisha whispered. But I'm terrified. This world, this life, people die, Ji-hoon. What if? Then we make every moment count. No more waiting. No more pretending this isn't happening. He kissed her again, softer this time, reverent. Stay with me tonight. Here, where you're safe. They fell asleep in his office, tangled together on the leather couch, and for the first time since her mother died, Keisha felt like she belonged somewhere. Like someone saw all of her, scars, strength, fear, and fire, and chose her anyway. But peace never lasted long in their world. Keisha woke to her phone, buzzing violently. Minji's name flashed on the screen, along with a dozen missed calls. She answered groggily. Minji? What? They know where you live. Minji's voice was panicked, speaking rapid Korean. Keisha, there are men outside my apartment asking about you. They know we're friends. They're looking for you. Keisha sat up, adrenaline spiking. Ji-hoon was already awake, his expression alert and dangerous. Where are you now? Keisha asked. I ran. I'm at a PC bang in Hongdae. But Keisha, they said, Minji's voice broke. They said they're going to make you pay for interfering with their business. They said they're going to finish what the Legos fire started. The line went dead. Keisha's hands shook as she lowered the phone. They're threatening Minji to get to me. Ji-hoon was already on his phone, barking orders. Get a team to Hongdae. Find a friend. Bring her here. And I want every available person searching for Busan operatives in Seoul. Now. He turned to Keisha. This is my fault. I should have protected everyone close to you. You can't protect the whole world. But Keisha's voice trembled. Minji was innocent. She didn't deserve to be dragged into this violence. We need to end this. Not just hurt them economically. End them. Agreed. But first, we get your friend somewhere safe. Hannah's team found Minji within the hour, terrified but unharmed. When they brought her to the office, she stared at Keisha with wide eyes. What have you gotten yourself into? I'm sorry, Keisha said, pulling her friend into a hug. I never meant for this to touch you. Those men, they weren't playing, Keisha. They had guns. They knew your name, where you worked, everything. Minji looked around the office, at the armed guards and surveillance equipment. Who are you now? Someone who can protect you. I promise, they won't get near you again. Keisha turned to Ji-hoon. Minji needs to leave Korea. Somewhere safe until this is over. Already arranged, Ji-hoon said. Flight to Singapore in 3 hours. Secure apartment, protection detail, everything she needs. For as long as necessary. Minji grabbed Keisha's hand. Come with me. Leave this behind. We can start over together. For a moment, Keisha was tempted. But then she looked at Ji-hoon, at the empire they'd built together, at the version of herself she'd become, strong, powerful, unafraid. I can't. This is my fight now. But I'll make sure you're safe. I promise. After Minji left for the airport under heavy guard, Keisha felt the rage settle into something cold and focused. The Busan Syndicate had made this personal. They'd threatened the one person left in the world who'd cared about her before any of this. That was unforgivable. I want in, she told Ji-hoon. Not just the economic warfare. I want to be there when we take them down. Keisha, don't protect me from this. They came after my friend because of me. I have a right to be part of the response. Her eyes blazed with determination. You said my scars are power. Let me use that power. Ji-hoon studied her, then slowly nodded. All right, but you follow my orders exactly. One mistake and you're out. Agreed. Agreed. The plan came together over the next week. While Keisha systematically destroyed the Busan Syndicate's international connections, turning their African partners, freezing their European accounts, exposing their smuggling routes to authorities, Ji-hoon prepared for the final strike. Intelligence revealed that the Busan boss, Kim Sang-ho, was consolidating his forces in a warehouse district, preparing for all-out war. He thinks we're going to hit him directly, Ji-hoon explained during the final briefing. Instead, we're going to cut off his escape routes, freeze his assets, and force him to surrender or face complete annihilation. And if he chooses to fight, one operative asked. Ji-hoon's smile was cold. Then we remind him why you don't make enemies of people who've already survived fire. The night of the operation, Keisha wore tactical gear for the first time, bulletproof vest, comm device, weapon at her hip. She'd trained for this over the past week, learning to shoot, learning to move, learning to survive in combat. Ji-hoon had been a strict teacher, pushing her hard because he couldn't bear the thought of losing her. Stay close to me, he said as they prepared to move out. No heroics. We go in, we secure the target, we leave. Clean and efficient. But nothing ever went according to plan. They were 30 minutes into the operation when everything went wrong. The warehouse wasn't just a stronghold, it was a trap. Explosions rocked the building as Kim Sang-ho's men opened fire from hidden positions. Ji-hoon's team scrambled for cover as bullets tore through the warehouse. Keisha dove behind a steel container, her heart pounding so hard she could barely hear Ji-hoon shouting orders over the comm system. This was nothing like training. This was chaos and death and the smell of gunpowder burning her lungs. Fall back. Ji-hoon's voice cracked through her earpiece. It's a setup. Everyone out now. But as Keisha turned to retreat, she saw 3 of Sang-ho's men circling behind their position, cutting off the exit. Ji-hoon, we've got hostiles on our 6. I see them. Stay down. Ji-hoon returned fire, his movements precise and lethal. But there were too many. For every enemy they dropped, 2 more appeared. They were outnumbered and outpositioned. Then Keisha saw him, Kim Sang-ho himself, emerging from an office overlooking the warehouse floor. He held a detonator in one hand and a radio in the other. Kong Ji-hoon, his voice boomed through speakers. You brought your African whore to die with you. How romantic. Rage flooded through Keisha's veins. She'd spent her whole life being reduced to her appearance, her scars, her otherness. But this time felt different. This time, she had the power to fight back. Before Ji-hoon could stop her, she stood up, weapon raised. I'm not his whore. I'm his partner. And you made a mistake threatening my friend. Sang-ho laughed. Bold words from dead woman walking. This entire building is rigged to explode. You have 2 choices, surrender, and I'll make your deaths quick. Or keep fighting and burn alive. Again. The word again hit Keisha like a physical blow. He knew about the Lagos fire. He'd researched her trauma and weaponized it. The old Keisha, the one who'd spent years hiding her scars and shrinking herself, would have frozen in terror. But she wasn't that person anymore. You think fire scares me? Keisha's voice rang out clear and strong. I've already survived the worst burn of my life. It killed my mother. It marked me forever. But you know what it didn't do? It didn't break me. And neither will you. She saw Ji-hoon moving in her peripheral vision, using her distraction to flank Sang-ho's position. Trust. That's what they built together. The ability to read each other, to work in sync without words. Keisha kept talking, keeping Sang-ho's attention fixed on her. You call me a whore because you can't understand why Ji-hoon would choose me. Because in your small, pathetic world, a black woman with scars couldn't possibly be valued for her intelligence, her strength, her strategic mind. Keisha took a step forward. But that's your weakness, Sang-ho. You underestimate everyone who doesn't look like you. And that's why you're going to lose. Sang-ho raised the detonator. Big speech from someone about to. Ji-hoon's shot was perfect. The detonator flew from Sang-ho's hand, and before he could reach for his weapon, Ji-hoon had him pinned against the railing. You threaten what's mine, Ji-hoon growled. That was your last mistake. The fight ended quickly after that. Without their leader and with their trap neutralized, Sang-ho's men surrendered. Henna's tech team swept the building, disabling the explosives. It was over. The Busan Syndicate was finished, their leader captured, their operation exposed, their power shattered. In the aftermath, As police sirens wailed in the distance and Ji-hoon's team secured the scene, Keisha found herself shaking. The adrenaline was wearing off, leaving behind the reality of what had just happened. She'd almost died. They'd all almost died. Ji-hoon found her sitting against a wall, pulled her into his arms, and just held her. "You could have been killed," he whispered into her hair. "When you stood up, my heart stopped. I had to. He was going to kill all of us anyway. At least my way, we had a chance." Keisha pulled back to look at him. "I'm not helpless anymore, Ji-hoon. I'm not the woman who got rejected from 15 jobs. I'm someone who fights back. I know, and that's what terrifies me, because now I have something to lose." Ji-hoon's scarred hands framed her face. "I love you, Keisha Nelson. Your strength, your scars, your fire, all of it. And I don't care if that makes me weak. I don't care if loving you is the most dangerous thing I've ever done." Keisha felt tears streaming down her face. Happy tears, terrified tears, relieved tears, all mixed together. "I love you too. And we're going to survive this. We've both already survived fire. Everything else is easy by comparison." They kissed there in the wreckage, surrounded by chaos and victory, two scarred survivors who'd found each other in the darkest places and built something beautiful from the ashes. 3 months later, Keisha stood in front of a mirror in a Seoul art gallery. The event was a charity fundraiser for burn survivors, Korean and international, all welcome. She wore an elegant black dress that showcased her keloid scars proudly, her natural hair in elaborate braids adorned with gold accessories. The gallery walls displayed photos and stories of survivors, celebrating their strength rather than pitying their pain. Ji-hoon came up behind her, his own scars visible in his tailored suit with no tie, his collar open. "Ready?" he asked. "More than ready." Keisha turned to face the crowd, business leaders, politicians, community organizers. People who used to ignore her or reject her now listened when she spoke. Not because she'd changed who she was, but because she'd finally found a space where she could be fully herself. She took the microphone and began her speech. 5 years ago, I came to Seoul believing that if I worked hard enough, was smart enough, accomplished enough, people would see past my scars. I was wrong. They always saw the scars. The difference now is that I see them too, not as flaws to hide, but as proof that I survived something meant to destroy me. The audience was silent, captivated. Keisha continued, her voice strong and clear. I spent years trying to fit into spaces that were never built for me. Being rejected for jobs I was overqualified for. Being told I didn't belong because of how I looked, where I came from, what marked my skin. But then I met someone who taught me that scars aren't weaknesses, they're armor. They're proof of survival. And they're beautiful. She found Ji-hoon in the crowd. He was watching her with that expression she'd come to cherish. Complete admiration mixed with love. "Today, I run a successful international business. I employ people from 15 countries. I've built something meaningful from nothing. And I did it not by hiding who I am, but by embracing every part of my journey. The pain, the fire, and yes, the scars." The applause was thunderous. After her speech, people crowded around, burn survivors thanking her for her words, business people offering partnerships, journalists requesting interviews. But the moment that mattered most came when a young Korean Nigerian girl, maybe 13, approached shyly. "Miss Nelson?" The girl's voice was barely a whisper. She had burn scars on her arm and face. "I heard your story. About being rejected. About being different. And I just wanted to say, you give me hope." Keisha knelt down to the girl's level, taking her hands. "What's your name?" "Amara." "Amara, listen to me. The world is going to try to make you small. People are going to judge you before they know you. But your scars? They're proof that you're a survivor. And survivors are the strongest people on earth." Keisha touched her own scars. "Don't hide. Don't apologize. And never, ever let anyone make you feel like you're less than extraordinary. Okay." Amara nodded, tears in her eyes. "Okay." As the girl walked away with her mother, who mouthed a tearful "thank you," Ji-hoon wrapped his arm around Keisha's waist. "You're changing lives." "We're changing lives," Keisha corrected. "You gave me the chance to become who I was meant to be." "No, I just recognized what was already there." Ji-hoon kissed her temple. "You did the rest." That night, they stood on the balcony of their shared penthouse overlooking the Han River. Seoul's lights glittered like stars reflected in water. Minji had returned from Singapore safely and was rebuilding her life. Emmanuel's network was thriving, bringing legitimate opportunities to West African communities. The Busan Syndicate was dismantled, its leaders in prison. And Keisha Nelson, once rejected, once invisible, once ashamed, was now unforgettable. "Do you ever miss the old life?" Ji-hoon asked. Before all this, Keisha considered the question honestly. "I miss my mother. I miss the simplicity of not knowing how dangerous the world really is. But miss who I was? No, that woman was hiding. I'm finally visible now. Finally powerful. Finally free. Good. Because I plan on keeping you visible, powerful, and by my side for a very long time. Ji-hoon turned her to face him. Maybe forever, if you'll have me. Is that a proposal, Kang Ji-hoon? It's a promise. That I'll never ask you to be anything less than exactly who you are. Scars and all. Keisha smiled, radiant, confident, completely herself. Then forever sounds perfect. They kissed as Seoul sparkled below them. Two people marked by fire who'd found each other in the flames and built an empire from the ashes. Keisha had learned the most important lesson of her life. She didn't need the world's permission to take up space. She just needed to stop waiting for someone else to validate her worth. Her scars weren't her shame. They were her story, and she was just getting started writing the next chapter. So what about you? Have you ever felt rejected for something beyond your control? Have you ever hidden parts of yourself hoping to be accepted? Drop your story in the comments below. Let's build a community of survivors who refuse to stay invisible. And if Keisha's journey from rejection to redemption resonated with you, hit that like button and subscribe for more stories about people who refuse to let the world break them. Because everyone has scars, the only question is whether you'll hide them or wear them like armor. Thanks for watching, and remember, you're not broken. You're forged.